When 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard vanished after a bizarre 3-day road trip with her own mother, police weren't just searching for a missing child, they were trying to understand why her mother wouldn't help find her. Not only was Melodee missing, but her mother was inexplicably uncooperative with police. For 2 months, Ashley Buzzard gave no clue as to the whereabouts of her daughter. In a case oddly comparable to the timeline of Lori Vallow's crimes, the public demanded answers. So what happened to Melodee Buzzard? And where does the case stand now? Let's find out. Hello everybody, welcome back to 5 Seconds to Sundown. I am your host Gemma, and if you're new here, this is where I talk about crime and justice, dark history, and the occasional ghost story. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and also let me know in the comments which cases you'd like me to look into next. Today we're looking into a case that's been in the headlines for a few weeks now. It's the story of a missing 9-year-old girl, a weird road trip that spanned multiple American states, her absolutely eccentric mother, and a heartbreaking discovery that shocked families, police, and communities across the United States. California-based Melodee Buzzard was last seen with her mother in early October 2025. After 2 months of searching, her remains were finally found in a remote area of Utah. Her mother, Ashley Buzzard, now faces charges of first-degree murder in what authorities describe as a calculated and cold-blooded act. So what's going on here? Today we're going to talk through what happened, how the investigation unfolded, the evidence law enforcement has gathered, and where this case stands now. Because I think this case is actually far from being over. I think there's a lot more that's going to come out as this case progresses. I'd also like to point out that this is not the entire story. The whole story would probably be a 3-part series, which I may do one day. But these are the main points that you need to know about this case at the moment. I'd also like to include a trigger warning as well, because this episode includes discussion of child death and harm to a child. Also, I'll be talking about mental illness a little bit as well. So who are the Buzzard family? Well, Melodee Buzzard was just 9 years old at the time that she vanished after this road trip. And she, along with her mother, were residents of a place called Vandenberg Village in Lompoc, California. Melodee's father's name was Rubiel Meza, and he had sadly passed away in a tragic road accident when Melodee was only 6 months old. I believe it was a motorcycle accident. And after his death, Ashley struggled as a single mother of a very young child. From there, Ashley's mother said that she saw her daughter and granddaughter on fewer and fewer occasions as the years went by. I'd also like to point out as well that Ashley did have a child before Melodee that was taken away by CPS and I believe adopted by another family. Going on from Melodee not seeing her family, her grandmother, Lori Miranda, Ashley's mother, was interviewed by Court TV, and she seems to have had very little contact with Melodee at all over the years, and she makes it sound like Ashley had been keeping her from seeing family members on both sides of the family. She said that she hadn't seen Ashley or Melodee for a couple of years. She was aware that Child Protective Services had been called due to doubts about Ashley's ability to care for a child, and that Ashley needed medical treatment, potentially for some sort of mental break. That's just my speculation, but it seems like this woman is quite mentally ill. Here is a quote from the Court TV interview with Lori. She said, "The house was in disarray. There were raw eggs in pans. There was rotten food in the fridge that I think she was trying to give my granddaughter." So we're talking about elements of child neglect and child abuse here. Many people were concerned about Melodee. Police photos released last week also show the home is in a state of chaos, with upturned furniture, boxes and rubbish piled in corners, although it's not clear whether that was caused by police when they did a raid, or that's just the way that Ashley kept her house. According to The Sun, Melodee's paternal grandmother was apparently in the process of trying to adopt Melodee at the time of her disappearance. Melodee also had an older half-sister named Corinna, who did not live with them. I believe Corinna is from a previous relationship from Melodee's dad. Well, Corinna was also worried, and she reached out to Ashley to see if she and Melodee were okay. So a lot of people had concerns for this girl, because not only was Ashley keeping her daughter from her own family, she also didn't like Melodee playing with other kids. When a neighborhood mum asked if Melodee would like to play with her child at a playground, Ashley made up an excuse about her not playing well with the other kids and took Melodee home. Melodee wasn't even able to see the kids at school. Well, why is that, you may ask? Melodee was enrolled in school, but she was apparently homeschooled, which is unfortunately a pattern with true crime involving children and child abuse at home. In some tragic cases, homeschooling has been used to isolate children from the outside world, and I do find that this is because it allows the perpetrator to, in essence, hide the child from society in order to carry out their crimes without suspicion being raised. But in this case, authorities were notified of Melodee's disappearance by school administrators when Ashley did not pick up schoolwork and no assignments had been handed in. They apparently expected to see Ashley and or Melodee by at least mid-October, but when that didn't happen, they called the police. So in addition to the extended family members looking out for Melodee, we've also got the school. They know something's up. Now, Melodee's mother, Ashley Buzzard, was 40 years of age at the time of her daughter's disappearance, and she's a character all on her own, but we'll get into that a little bit later. According to law enforcement, Ashley and Melodee were last seen together on surveillance video shortly before Melodee's disappearance. And this is a moment that would become central to the investigation, because on October 7th, 2025, Ashley Buzzard and her daughter Melodee left Lompoc, California on what was apparently a 3-day road trip to Nebraska. The reason for this road trip is unknown, and when I say it was a 3-day road trip, it appears to have been a non-stop round trip there and back. Now, I'm from Australia, so of course I had to look this up on the Google because driving to Nebraska from California means absolutely nothing to me. So in Australian terms, it's about a 22-hour journey one way. So it's like driving from Melbourne to Rockhampton in Queensland. And that's a big journey to take over 3 days. You'd think that if you were going that far, it would be worth staying for a few extra days to rest up before you drive home, unless the road trip wasn't for fun. Investigators now believe the road trip itself may have played a role in what happened to Melodee, though the exact purpose has not yet been publicly confirmed. There are theories though. So, surveillance footage from a car rental facility captured Ashley and Melodee that day. Not only did they take an impromptu road trip, but Ashley also hired a car to do so. According to law enforcement, both Ashley and Melodee appeared to be wearing wigs in the CCTV, and investigators later said Ashley changed wigs during the trip, possibly to disguise their appearance. Now, why would you do that? Now, this is interesting, and it comes alongside the wig disguise. They were driving a white 2024 Chevrolet Malibu, initially displaying its California license plate, but investigators later determined the vehicle travelled with a New York license plate, one that did not originally belong to the car. That altered plate is believed to have been used by Ashley to avoid detection. So she picks up the car, she changes the plates, and she hits the road. On October 9, surveillance footage placed Melodee and Ashley near the Colorado-Utah border, and that was the last known confirmed sighting of Melodee Buzzard. Authorities now believe that it was around this time that Melodee was murdered. Ashley Buzzard returns to Lompoc, California alone on 10th of October with the rented Malibu, 3 days after she left with her daughter. But Melodee was not with her when she returned. 5 days later, on October 14, the situation escalated. A school administrator reported to law enforcement that Melodee had not attended school for a prolonged period. This began the missing child investigation officially. According to the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, initial efforts to locate Melodee centered on this timeline between October 7 and October 10, essentially narrowing down the window to that road trip itself. But authorities say at the time, Ashley provided no verifiable explanation for her daughter's absence. In other words, she's not cooperating with police. And this is the part of the story that really reminds me of the Lori Vallow case. Because like Lori Vallow, Ashley Buzzard said that her child was just visiting family. This, however, could not be verified. The public were outraged. Protesters lined up outside her house as she hid inside. They demanded answers and held prayer vigils, led by Melodee's family members. But Ashley still didn't give up the location of her child. As the investigation unfolded through late October and into November, several key developments emerged. Authorities traced the rented Malibu's route across multiple states, including Utah, Arizona, Nevada, back to California, and possibly as far as Nebraska, before returning. Investigators also confirmed that during this time, the Malibu had that false New York license plate, suggesting there was an attempt to conceal Ashley and Melodee's movements. Because why would you change the number plates of a rental car for an impromptu road trip across state lines, after which you return without your child? It's very incriminating. So as you would imagine, law enforcement executed search warrants at Ashley Buzzard's home, as well as a storage unit and the rented vehicle itself. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything to go on to arrest Ashley officially. They knew she was incredibly suspicious. We all know she's incredibly suspicious, but where was the smoking gun, so to speak? And that's when something interesting happened. Ashley Buzzard was in fact arrested, but not for the disappearance of her daughter. Rather, for an incident that occurred on November 6, 2025, when a friend of Ashley's named Tyler Brewer had claimed that Ashley Buzzard armed herself with a box cutter and kept him from leaving her home after he brought up Melodee's case. Apparently this guy's a paralegal and he just wanted to get some information. Ashley pled not guilty to these charges and she was actually freed, but Melodee was still missing. And after weeks of unanswered questions, there was a tragic breakthrough in the case. On December 6, 2025, a man and a woman taking photographs in a rural area of Wayne County, Utah, stumbled upon a body in a state of decomposition. Officials were called to the remote area, which was apparently a fair way from the usual roads and highways. I would suggest it's probably you'd have to hike to this area. The body had to be identified, but the state of the body, it was in such a state of decomposition that identifying it could only be done through DNA analysis. This found that the remains were a familial match to Ashley Buzzard, leading to the tragic confirmation families and investigators feared for weeks, that the remains belonged to Melodee Ilani Buzzard. It's also worth noting here that Melodee's paternal grandmother would like Melodee to be known as Melodee Buzzard Meza, which is her father's name. Authorities also were able to determine a cause of death. Melodee had sustained gunshot wounds to the head. Furthermore, a spent shell casing found in the Buzzard home matched casings located at the scene in Utah, and live bullets of a similar type were found in the rental vehicle, according to police. This is huge ballistic evidence, and it links Ashley to the location where Melodee's remains were found. However, despite this ballistic link, investigators have not yet recovered the murder weapon, and a motive has not yet publicly been established. Further implicating herself throughout the investigation, authorities reported that Ashley Buzzard remained uncooperative with detectives, which is weird for a mother whose daughter has just been found deceased. She offered no clear answers about her daughter's whereabouts when she was missing, significantly complicating early efforts to locate Melodee. And what mother wouldn't want their missing child to be found? Wouldn't she be on the news saying, Melodee, come home? At this point, the case against Ashley Buzzard is strong. It's highly suspicious. And with this new evidence, law enforcement took action. On December 23rd, 2025, Ashley Buzzard was arrested at her home in Vandenberg Village, California, and the public were informed about the discovery of Melodee's remains. So Melodee's remains had actually been found a couple of weeks previous, but they didn't want to let anyone know anything until they'd officially identified her remains. Ashley was booked into the Santa Barbara County Jail and is being held without bail on first-degree murder charges in connection with her daughter's death. And astonishingly, she pled not guilty. Some people believe that she will try to go for an insanity plea when it comes to trial. Maybe she will. I wouldn't be surprised. Sheriff Bill Brown referred to the case as involving, quote, cold-blooded and criminally sophisticated premeditation and heartlessness. And he described the evidence recovered as being strong because they had the ballistic matches and the CCTV images. Authorities say Ashley acted alone. Video surveillance and vehicle tracking, along with disguises allegedly used by Ashley during the trip, reflect deliberate attempts to avoid detection. And here's a theory. A private investigator that was hired by Melodee's father's family has shared his belief that Ashley may allegedly be involved in some kind of drug trafficking activity, and that something to do with that happened over the course of that weird cross-country road trip. Although the case has progressed to a murder charge, we still have questions. What was the motive? Where is the murder weapon? What was the purpose of that weird road trip? And why did Ashley allegedly switch the license plate and wear wigs to disguise herself? Well, it turns out that Ashley Buzzard just likes wearing wigs, apparently, as seen in her first arrest arraignment and her most recent one, in which she actually looks like Kath Day-Knight. It's just bizarre, and her use of over-the-top makeup reminds me so much of Lori Vallow and her strange looks in court earlier this year. Whether Ashley Buzzard is truly mentally ill or has got herself mixed up in some very dangerous trafficking activity, at the end of the day, a young girl lost her life. The public response to the tragedy has been one of heartbreak and disbelief. The Santa Barbara County's Sheriff Office emphasised that Melodee deserved a far better life, and they urged anyone with additional information to come forward because many aspects of this case remain under investigation as the case proceeds through the justice system. Cases involving parental filicide, when a parent kills their own child, are deeply disturbing and hard to grasp. They challenge our understanding of safety, trust, and family bonds. Law enforcement officials have described Melodee's death as both calculated and heartless. But for many, the questions will linger. Why did this happen? What will the trial reveal? And what else will we learn about Ashley Buzzard? What justice will follow? Only time and the court system will tell. And you can be sure I'll be reading all the headlines as this case continues. Please don't forget to subscribe for more true crime commentaries. My name is Gemma, I'm your host, and I will see you at sundown.